All right, so welcome back and thank you for coming. So today I will be sharing the stories of two collectors, which I came across on this label from Sweden. And you can see the names here. So I could tell that the last name is Arnell, but I wasn't really sure about, especially the first of the two names. So I went to our Harvard Botanist Index of Botanists website, and I found two Arnells who were collecting in Sweden. There's a Hampus Wilhelm Arnell and a Sigfrid Wilhelm Arnell, which appear to match our collectors. So we can see this is, I think, the abbreviation for Wilhelm, and then the abbreviation for Sigfrid Arnell. And it turns out these were actually father and son botanists, which is pretty cool. So they collected this particular specimen in August of 1912, and it is pronounced Jämtland, which is a historical province of Sweden, which you can see right here. And side note, has a very cool coat of arms of a poor moose being harassed from both sides. So this here is Undersöker Socken, which is a parish or kind of a county in Sweden in that historical province. Socken, which is here, actually means parish in Swedish. And then this Valista is actually a mountain in that parish. There is a popular hike up to the top, and you can see here it has really beautiful views on a clear day. So somewhere around here is where our specimen was collected over 100 years ago. So the specimen itself, you can see here, it was identified as Scapania oliginosa and is commonly known as marsh earwort. Although I have to say, if you Google marsh earwort, there's more than one species with that nickname. Again, a reminder of why we have scientific names. It's a liverwort. Per the British Bryological Society, it is bright green or purple in color, and it grows in bryophyte-dominated montane flushes and springs, forming extensive swollen turfs. And here's some pictures. You can see this is a close-up, a couple close-ups, and this is a picture of it out in the wild. So it likes to be wet, which you might guess from its common name. So I'll start with Wilhelm Arnell, which is full name Hampus Wilhelm Arnell, who was a Swedish bryologist and professor. He was born in 1848 in Härnösand, Sweden. As a student, he had an interest in botany, especially mosses. He studied in Uppsala in 1868 and received his bachelor's degree in 1872. And that next year, he actually began collecting phenological data, including information on when plants started flowering, and that would become a very long-term project, which I'll talk more about later. In 1875, he received his PhD and began to work as a privat docent of botany at the University of Uppsala, which that privat docent title is basically means someone is qualified to teach at the highest level. In 1878, he published an Arrival of Spring work, summarizing the first 5 years of that phenological observations that he started taking. And over the next 30 years, 30 plus years, he would work as a professor and lecturer in natural history and chemistry at a number of locations throughout Sweden and central Sweden. He collected mosses and other bryophytes throughout Sweden, up into northern Norway and also in Siberia. And Arnell studied both floristics and systematics, documenting Sweden's moss flora and describing many new species. He retired from teaching in 1913, but obviously did not fully retire from botany. He continued to record phenology data, publishing a second work on the topic in 1923, which included more than 30,000 observations over 50 years from locations all over Sweden. So it's a really impressive and important record of change over time in that region. So Arnell passed away in 1934 in Uppsala at the age of 84. But I will add a couple other events related to our next collector. So in 1880, Arnell married Helga Elizabeth Marie Axelius. And in 1895, while they were living in Gävle, the couple had a son who was called Sigfrid Wilhelm Arnell, so our second collector. And he would go on to become a physician and a hepatocologist, so he specialized in liverworts. Sigfrid was educated in Uppsala and Stockholm, and although he wrote some papers on vascular plants while he was a student, he decided to pursue a medical career. He was particularly interested in the use of X-rays for diagnosing injuries and illness. In 1922, he gained his medical license and joined his local hospital, where he would work for almost 40 years. In 1927, he became the director of the Röntgenological, which is a giant word that just means X-rays. I had to look it up, department. And it says in 1959, he defended his thesis and received a Doctor of Medicine degree, but then he retired the following year, moving to Bromma, Stockholm. So despite his main career being medicine, he maintained a lifelong interest in botany, and we know he was collecting per our original specimen with his father in 1912, which would have made him 17 at that time. One article said that he had inherited from his father not only his interest in hepatology, but also an old microscope that he had used all his life. So in his mid-40s, he actually took up studying liverworts, but that botanical work was really on his own time and at his own expense. In the 1950s and 60s, he made some collecting trips to the Spitsbergen, the Canary Islands, northern Sweden, and Egypt. After his retirement from the hospital in 1960, he became associated with the State Museum of Natural History and had some more time to focus on botany. He published findings on liverwort flora of his nearby Fennoscandia region, but also became interested in bryophytes growing in the southern hemisphere. So he actually spent 4 months in South Africa and ended up publishing the first survey of liverworts from that country. And he studied specimens from other collectors who visited southern locations. Sadly, by 1965, he had to quit his botanical work due to his failing eyesight and also Parkinson's disease. And he passed away in 1970 at the age of 75. So the father and son duo are associated with a combined total of almost 800 taxon names in Tropicos. Hampus Wilhelm authored a number of important publications. This is just a sampling largely on Scandinavian bryophytes. And Sigfrid authored 79 scientific works. Hampus Wilhelm is memorialized in the names of 2 liverwort genera. So there's an Arnellia and an Arnelliella. And Sigfrid was made an honorary member of the British Bryological Society in 1951 and granted an honorary doctorate from the University of Uppsala in 1958 in recognition of his contribution to the study of liverworts. So I found over 10,000 specimens that were collected by at least one of the Arnells in the Bryophyte portal. Over 300 lichens, just 10 vascular plants, and at least 8,000 in GBIF. I got tired. You have to add like each individual combination of names and way it's spelled, who they're collecting with individually. So I got kind of tired of adding more. So there's more than 8,000, at least 8,000 in the search bar. And so that is Hampus Wilhelm and Sigfrid Wilhelm Arnell, 2 generations of Swedish bryologists. Then I'll end with a little quote I found for each of them. So about Hampus Wilhelm, it said, through his many travels within most of Sweden's landscapes, Hampus Arnell has contributed more than any other bryologist to the knowledge of Sweden's bryology. The distinguishing feature of his works is the critical sharpness and the thoroughness with which he treated the most diverse areas within bryology. His treatise on the development of vegetation in Sweden is still the most important work published in Sweden in this branch of botany. And a slightly lighter-hearted story about Sigfrid said he was a quiet, kind, and honest man. As a person with humor, he could enjoy a funny situation, such as when somebody, not aware of the existence of 2 generations of bryologists, Arnell by name, asked him in a letter for his age. The writer of the letter expected it to be very high, since Arnell had visited Siberia in 1876. So I'm assuming that was not the only time he got confused by his father. They have very similar names, which you might see on a label. So keep your eye out for them. And thank you again for listening.